Tutorial 4. Taking pattern measurements off the mock-up. I have put our mock-up onto the dress form and stuffed it with some padding polyester and shoulder pads to give it a realistic shape. Please make sure you recreate the desired shape of your corset properly when you put the mock-up onto the dress form. All seams should be tight and directed the way you want. Only this kind of proper tightening will allow you to adjust the pattern. If you have a feeling that something is wrong, you will be able to take precise measurements only thanks to good tightening. I have marked the waistline with points along the notches that show through. You can tie a cord around it if you want to be sure about its location. In my case, everything matches so perfectly, as if I had tied this cord before making the notches. Now I can take all necessary measurements for our pattern and write them down. I always write any reference symbols, commentaries, and alterations right on the pattern. How do I take measurements? If you want to have some space between the halves of the back, you should measure full circumferences. But if you intend to make the halves close, then you should measure the back from edge to edge. If you want to have a V-cut at the back, you will have to alter the patterns, i.e., draw a triangle there. This concerns the front V-cut as well. There is 1.5 centimeters between the front pieces, and we should account for this 1.5 centimeters. Now I will take and write down all measurements in such a way as if the back halves closed, i.e., from one edge of the back to the opposite edge. I don't account for any distances apart from that 1.5 centimeters. And now I take a measuring tape and measure the pieces. Along the waistline, there is 34 centimeters from the edge of the back to the middle of the front, which means the full circumference is 68 centimeters. The front halves close at the waistline level, so we don't need to account for 1.5 centimeters. You can mark it on the pattern piece that the gap at the front is 1.5 centimeters, and then write the measurements down with 1.5 centimeters accounted for. Everything should be in its actual sizes. What concerns the bust middle? The actual bust middle measurement should be somewhere here, and it equals about 19 centimeters or maximum 20 centimeters. I mark the points. The princess seams are slightly inclined in accordance with the corset model. This, however, doesn't mean that the bust middle measurement equals the distance between the princess seams, 24 centimeters. Not at all. I believe the measurement is 19 centimeters on the person who will wear this corset, and on whom its cup should look like on the dress form now. All princess seams are man-made for the sake of design. I write it onto the piece that the bust middle equals 19 to 20 centimeters. You could use this pattern for sewing corsets with a bust middle measurement up to 24 centimeters. But if your client's measurement is considerably smaller, then the bust will have less volume too, and so will everything else. So you couldn't insert such cups into a corset like this if your client's bust middle equaled, let's say, 16 to 17 centimeters. It means you will have to narrow the pattern in the bust middle area. Clip measurements are taken from the bust middle point. Clip to the sky, 11 centimeters. Clip upwards is irrelevant in our case. Clip to the middle of the neckline, 6 centimeters. Bust front. It goes from one side seam to the opposite through the bust middle and equals 49 centimeters. Under bust front, 38 centimeters from one side seam to the opposite. Bust circumference. At first I tie a cord along the bust line following the notches so as to see the line properly. As you can tell, the back is somewhat lifted up. We can correct it later on the pattern. The distance to the middle is 43 centimeters. Therefore, the circumference equals 86 centimeters. Under bust circumference, 70 centimeters. Bottom circumference, 92 centimeters. Side length, 18.5 centimeters. Please note that there are no seam allowances at the top. According to the technique for sewing organza corsets, the top edge is given a pencil edge finish instead of getting folded. So we see it all real-sized now. Corset length, 14 centimeters. Stomach circumference. I measure it 12 centimeters below the waistline. The result is 90 centimeters. Side length, 18 centimeters. I will trim the pattern in accordance with it. I shall measure the length of the straps and make a fastener during the fitting test. This is all about measuring our mock-up corset. Now we should just calculate the patterns after clients' measurements and cut them out of our fine, luxurious fabric.